I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the median age in Africa is 19.4 years old.
Yeah.
TikTok is perfectly suited for teens and for young people. In fact, there were some statistics that came out in Kenya that 60% of the population there gets their news more from TikTok than anywhere else. Now, Kenya is an interesting case study here because most African countries, when it comes to the concerns that the United States raises about Chinese tech companies, we've talked about Huawei a lot on this show, most Africans go, you know what, that's just not our problem. That's not our fight. But on TikTok, the Kenyans seem to be having second thoughts a little bit. So back in March, Kenya is demanding that TikTok prove that it's adhering to local privacy and user verification laws, and they are threatening to crack down, even potentially ban the app. Now, a lot of people say them banning the app is just politics in the legislature. They're not really going to do it. But there is a concern in Kenya about the spread of propaganda, fraud, and also the availability of sexualized content on the platform and the lack of content moderation there. Are those concerns in Kenya unique to Kenya, or do you see other African countries also have those same worries about TikTok and the way that it disseminates information?
It's an interesting topic. So I don't think they're unique to Kenya. If you look at Nigeria, we have Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, right? So yes, in this part of the world, we're actively thinking about our version of GDPR or just something that protects our data. And this is because, yes, one, many of our legislators are being clued on the fact that data is the new competitive advantage, right? Anybody that controls the data, can do so much with it. So for instance, they can spread the propaganda that will affect their elections, which they care about the most. So like many African politicians, they care a lot about elections. They want to be able to control the news and the media. And when these social media platforms from outside the country gaining so much ground, they become harder to control. So the government needs to rein them in through either licenses or through certifications or through regulations and guidelines. So I think definitely many African countries are beginning to look at their data as precious. And of course, maybe not because of the altruistic purpose, but more for like how they can control it in the future, right? But the second thing I see is that, yes, there will be some level of protectionism for their homegrown products, right? But the problem now is I'm not seeing any homegrown competitor to a TikTok. So like there's no made in Nigeria or made in Kenya app that has had so much traction or that has shown the dedication to compete with a TikTok. So in that sense, I'm like, yes, the only thing you could possibly be protecting right now is maybe your own propaganda as an African government, and yes, maybe your data because you want to use it as a source of negotiation on the global stage. But like we need to see more homegrown platforms that are trying to tackle or rival these players. If not, even if you ban apps, your constituents will use VPNs to access these apps because it has become part of their livelihood. So take a case in point, X was banned. In fact, Twitter then was banned in Nigeria. And for one, I use the VPN to access Twitter because, most of my following is on Twitter. Most of where I get my news, most of how I disseminate information is on Twitter. So I think the government needs to use a holistic approach to regulating these global media giants. And yes, data privacy is one leg by which they're approaching it, but I think there's still a lot more that they need to do and see to bring this to where they want it to be.